"I've been waiting for so long," Nancy said, looking up and meeting my gaze. Her words left me dumbfounded. Nancy nodded emphatically, wiping her tears with a handkerchief, then began to share her story. "The truth is, I've been attending all those matchmaking events to find someone. 8 years ago, I met a man just once. I don't know his name, but I knew he worked at that trading company. So I asked my dad to introduce me to someone who has been at the company for 8 years. But with just that information, it was impossible to identify him. The barrage of questions I had answered earlier was apparently to determine if I was the one she was searching for. Since it would be inappropriate to ask a lot of personal questions through Mr. Wilson, they resorted to the blind date format. The story Nancy shared next would significantly change my life. "My name is Richard Jones. I'm 42 years old. I'm an office worker at a trading company. I joined the company at 22 right after graduating college. It's been 20 years since then. In that time, many things have happened. My talented colleagues have set records for early promotions, started businesses overseas, and acquired lovely homes with their families. Even I, who had no interest in climbing the corporate ladder, found myself managing several subordinates as a middle manager. 20 years is indeed a significant amount of time. However, there are things that never change, no matter how much time passes. That's human nature. I lost my father in a car accident when I was a child and have lived with my mother since then. My paternal grandparents passed away early, and we were estranged from my maternal relatives. Suddenly becoming a single-parent family, we had no one to turn to in times of need. Although we received my father's insurance payout, it was not enough for the two of us to live on. My mother, who had always been frail, worked tirelessly day and night to put me through college. Thanks to her, I graduated from college and joined this trading company. Now my mother has retired and tries to take care of her health. However, even after I started working and sending her money, she never spent it on herself. Of course, living expenses are inevitable, but if my mother thinks something is even a little extravagant, she says it's wasteful and doesn't buy it. Just to clarify, I send her enough money each month to live comfortably, and she also receives a small pension. Even though she could afford to spend on hobbies or entertainment, she stubbornly lives a frugal life, probably because the lifestyle of raising me alone after my father died has become ingrained in her. Although not as extreme as my mother, I think my personality is also heavily influenced by my childhood memories. For instance, I only eat out for work-related reasons and mainly cook at home. Sometimes I'd bike to multiple grocery stores to find the best deals. My casual clothes are mostly from fast fashion, and I cut my own hair when it gets too long. Since a senior colleague advised me shortly after I joined the company, I've chosen age-appropriate brands for work attire, but many items are gifts or hand-me-downs. In fact, the watch I wear every day is a gift from that senior colleague. There are people who enjoy checking out new brand items and collecting similar series, but I can't understand that at all because I live such a thrifty lifestyle. My subordinates think my hobby is saving money. It's frustrating to be implicitly called stingy, but it's the truth. So I can't help it. I'm a boring man with no particular hobbies or talents, living an extremely frugal life. Despite being single, it's no wonder there have been almost no romantic stories about me at this age. I thought I would continue living my quiet, solitary life. However, life is full of surprises. A major turning point, one I could never have predicted, was about to happen. My department is divided into 5 sections, and a few years ago, I was promoted to manager of one of them. I was assigned subordinates who were much more capable than I am. Thanks to them, we've managed to avoid major mistakes and consistently achieve good results. However, no matter how well my team performs, we've never been the top section in the department. The reason is that there's always another team that outperforms us. That team is led by Tom Miller. From the time he joined the company, he has always been an outstanding performer, well regarded by our bosses and rumored to be a future executive, despite being in his early 30s. Among the 5 section managers in our department, Tom is by far the youngest. By the way, I am the oldest, nearly 10 years his senior. As you can see, I am losing the promotion race badly, but our team competition is quite close. Recently, the performance reports usually show Tom's team at the top, with my team in a close second. Tom's main strength is that he has many large clients. The quickest way to boost performance is to take on clients with significant deals. Tom, skilled in people management and information gathering, has been pulling in large clients indiscriminately since his promotion to manager. Some of these clients were even forcibly switched from other companies or sections. Tom, who will stop at nothing for the sake of his performance, currently has his sights set on Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson is the president of a company that does $5 million in business monthly, undeniably a major client for our company. The employee originally in charge was transferred overseas, so now Mr. Wilson is temporarily overseen by the department head. Recently, word has it that Mr. Wilson is looking for a new account manager. There's no way Tom would miss this opportunity. He will likely work his way into Mr. Wilson's good graces and make him his client. This means Tom's team will probably top the department's performance charts again this month. As I sigh thinking about this, I was unexpectedly called to the conference room by the department head. He told me to accompany him on a visit to Mr. Wilson's company. Moreover, he asked me to keep it confidential from the other employees. It's almost certainly related to selecting a new account manager. I was surprised to be considered, but I couldn't pass up this opportunity. However, after putting in my best effort and meeting with Mr. Wilson alongside the department head, I was quickly disappointed. Mr. Wilson barely greeted us before starting a conversation completely unrelated to business. "Would you consider matchmaking with my daughter?" I was stunned by the sudden mention of matchmaking. I must have looked quite foolish, but Mr. Wilson continued without noticing my reaction. "Richard, do you have a girlfriend?" "No, I don't have a partner at the moment." "In that case, I'd like you to meet my daughter. Don't worry about me or the company. You can refuse if you want. This is a personal request." Mr. Wilson told me this calmly, despite my obvious confusion. Honestly, I was very surprised. But as a single man without a girlfriend, I had no reason to refuse. Besides, if I declined, I didn't know what the department head who introduced me would say. So I decided to accept the matchmaking. "I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'd be happy to meet her." "Good, I'm glad to hear that. I'll send you the details later." Mr. Wilson nodded in relief. After talking briefly about work, my first meeting with Mr. Wilson came to an end. It seemed that the main topic was the matchmaking, and the business talk was secondary. Later, I heard from the department head that recently Mr. Wilson has been setting up matchmakings between his daughter and single employees. Apparently, the president's daughter has a difficult personality, and the employees who go on these matchmakings come back deeply depressed. Moreover, they get flatly rejected after just one meeting. Even Tom couldn't win the daughter's favor and has now shifted his focus to impressing Mr. Wilson directly. Knowing I wouldn't meet their expectations, I resolved to handle the matchmaking politely and avoid any mistakes. By the time I returned to the office after accepting the matchmaking arrangement, I already felt like I had been rejected. As soon as I got back to my desk, Tom approached me. He seemed to have guessed that Mr. Wilson had set me up with his daughter. "Richard, did you accept that proposal?" Tom asked. "I did," I replied, not sure how much I should say. I hesitated with my response. Taking it as an affirmation, Tom nodded to himself and began talking. "Is that so? The department head is not good at keeping secrets. It's obvious when and who he takes to that company. Really, Richard, didn't you notice? Almost every eligible bachelor in our department has been called in. Well, not the newbies or the really young guys. I guess younger men are excluded anyway. Everyone who's been asked has been thoroughly defeated by that difficult young lady." Tom smirked with his thin lips. As the department head had mentioned, my matchmaking seemed to be someone with a difficult personality. Not knowing what to say, I stayed silent as Tom started venting about the young lady. "It seems he holds a grudge for being rejected. That woman has a really nasty personality, so you better be prepared, Richard. Is she really that bad?" "Worse than you can imagine," Tom continued. "First thing she does is look you up and down, criticizing your clothes and belongings. She always nitpicks in conversation and has a knack for annoying people. That's why, despite being the president's daughter, she's still single." Tom finished his rant in one breath, looking satisfied. As he snorted, having said everything he wanted, he left cheerfully for his section, while my anxiety only grew. Tom is clearly an excellent businessman. Naturally, he pays extra attention to his appearance and manners. He definitely has good taste, and I've heard he's popular with women. If Tom but rejected, what kind of young lady is she? And considering I use a second-hand watch and bag, how will she treat me? The more I thought about it, the more my spirits sank. Then the day of the matchmaking arrived. Dressed in my best suit, I waited in the designated hotel lounge. A woman appeared. It was Nancy Wilson, the daughter of our major client, Mr. Wilson. She was in her late 20s, but looked younger. She didn't look like the difficult woman the department head and Tom described. "Nice to meet you. I'm Richard Jones. You must be Nancy Wilson. Thank you for taking the time to meet me today," I greeted her. "That's not necessary." Nancy cut me off before I could finish my greeting. I was somewhat taken aback, but managed to stay composed. Had I not been warned about her personality beforehand, I would have been utterly flustered. Seeing me smile silently, urging her to continue, Nancy hesitated slightly before responding. "You're only here because my dad told you to come, right? Let's just get this over with. Answer a few of my questions, and then you can leave." "Okay, I understand," I replied. And so our matchmaking began in the worst possible atmosphere. As she had warned, Nancy bombarded me with questions. They ranged from typical topics like work and family to more specific ones about my clothes and what I usually eat. There were also some peculiar questions, like whether I buy plastic umbrellas at convenience stores or if I like mint-flavored candy. Despite not understanding the purpose of these questions, I answered them all honestly. Then something strange happened. Nancy's attitude towards me began to soften. She now had a childlike expression of surprise and expectation, a stark contrast to how she was just 10 minutes earlier. As I watched her transformation in astonishment, Nancy suddenly started to cry, overwhelmed with emotion. "What, Nancy? Are you okay? What's wrong?" Taken aback by the sudden turn of events, I asked her anxiously. Nancy looked up, staring directly into my eyes. "I've been waiting for so long." "For so long," she said. I could only repeat her words, dumbfounded as Nancy nodded emphatically. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and began to explain. "The truth is, I've been going on all these matchmakings to find someone." "Really? Who are you looking for?" I asked. "Someone I met just once about 8 years ago. I don't know his name, but I knew he worked at that trading company. So I asked my dad to introduce me to people who have been with the company for 8 years. That alone isn't enough to identify a person." The questions I had answered earlier were apparently to determine if I was the one she was looking for, since she couldn't ask a lot of personal questions through Mr. Wilson. They used the matchmaking format instead. "Just out of curiosity, didn't you remember his face? Wouldn't it have been easier to recognize him without all this trouble?" I asked. "Well, I wasn't interested in him when we met. I didn't even look at his face. I only recently felt the need to find him," Nancy said, looking down shyly. She wanted to meet a guy she met once 8 years ago. Our employees and Mr. Wilson were all indulging the whims of a young lady. As Nancy remained silent, looking down, I decided to ask her a crucial question. "So, you said you've been waiting for so long earlier. Am I the one you've been waiting for?" "Yes, that's right. You're the one I've been looking for, Richard," Nancy answered in a small voice, her face bright red. I felt bad for her, but I didn't remember meeting her in the past. Honestly, why would anyone want to meet an unremarkable guy like me again after all these years? I couldn't believe I was the person Nancy had been searching for, so I decided to ask her for more details. "Nancy, can you tell me about what happened 8 years ago?" "Sorry, but I can't seem to remember." Okay, with that, Nancy began to talk slowly about the past. About 8 years ago, Nancy was dating a senior she met in a college club. He was a sociable guy with a good personality and many friends, teaching the naive Nancy about various things, new places, new friends, new activities. Every day was exciting and fun, but gradually he began asking her for money. Every date he'd make lame excuses like, "I forgot my wallet," or "I'm short on cash this month," making Nancy pay. At first, Nancy went along with paying him, but she soon started to get suspicious. Then, one rainy day, they got into a huge argument while driving. During the fight, Nancy found out that he was only interested in her for her money. Devastated by the realization that her beloved boyfriend only cared about her money, Nancy got out of the car at a red light and ran away. She didn't care that her expensive clothes and bag were getting soaked in the rain. She just walked aimlessly until she found a small bus stop. Nancy sat on the bench and zoned out for a while. Then someone spoke to her from behind. "There's no bus at this hour." Startled, Nancy turned around and saw a man holding grocery bags standing there. He was wearing a suit, likely just off work, and the green onions sticking out of his shopping bag looked out of place. The man approached the bench where Nancy was sitting and, looking at the bus schedule, spoke again. "See, I told you there are fewer buses at this time. You'll be waiting for about an hour." "That's fine," Nancy answered briefly, still wary of the man who had spoken to her. She wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone. However, the man didn't seem to notice her "leave me alone" vibe. "Miss, why don't you walk to the station and take the train? I can lend you this umbrella." With that, the man offered me his black, worn-out umbrella. She didn't feel like taking the old umbrella, so she refused without hesitation. "No thanks. I can buy an umbrella at the convenience store." "Oh, right. I guess that's what most people would do. I've never bought a convenience store umbrella myself." The man didn't seem bothered by her refusal and nodded as if he was impressed by the idea. He seemed so carefree. As her guard against him lowered, memories of her argument with her boyfriend came flooding back. Tears started to flow uncontrollably, and before long, she was sobbing despite the stranger nearby. "Sorry, I don't have a handkerchief right now," the man said apologetically, offering her a mint candy instead. Confused, Nancy looked up at him and asked, "Why mint?" "Because it's my favorite flavor." "Do you not like mint? I thought the coolness might help stop your tears." Nancy couldn't help but laugh at the man's nonsensical logic. He seemed a bit odd, but not a bad person. She accepted the mint candy and told him about her fight with her boyfriend. The man listened quietly to her story and stayed with her until the next bus arrived. After seeing her onto the bus, he headed home with his heavy shopping bags. This happened 8 years ago. Listening to Nancy's story, I finally remembered the event. "Oh, you were that girl." "Yes, I never got to thank you then. It may be too late, but thank you so much." "No, I just listened to you talk." Seeing Nancy thank me made me feel awkward. I really didn't do much. I couldn't even say anything comforting about her heartbreak, and talking to a stranger like that might have made me seem suspicious. However, Nancy didn't seem to think that way and continued, blushing. "No, Richard, you saved me. You were kind to me without expecting anything in return, and it was the first time I realized such a person existed. Every time a man approached me for my money, I thought of you. I think being kind and expecting something in return is strange. Are there really that many people who approach you for your money? Yes, every person I've dated was, to some extent, after my wealth. Even my previous matchmakings, they only cared about my dad and his company, not me. Nancy looked down sadly. Her high-handed attitude towards her matchmakings was probably a way to protect herself from getting hurt. As I was pondering this, Nancy timidly asked, "Ah, Richard, you're the only one who's my destined partner. I think all my failed relationships were meant to lead me back to you. So, if you don't mind, would you go out with me, Nancy?" Just to confirm, you knew my age, right? Yes, you're 42. The age difference doesn't matter at all, Nancy cheerfully said. She didn't mind the age difference, but honestly, I did. Even though we had met before, we didn't know each other well, so we decided to start by being friends first. The news that I was dating Mr. Wilson's daughter quickly spread throughout the office. I finally found my destined partner, so I'm done with matchmaking, Nancy declared to her father, Mr. Wilson. It spread like wildfire. Because of this, I was bombarded with questions from both my boss and subordinates. Tom, in particular, was relentless, always trying to extract information from me whenever he could. He couldn't stand that someone he considered inferior had succeeded in the matchmaking. "What kind of trick did you use? I heard you met her before. Did you have some leverage over her or Mr. Wilson? Come on, tell me," Tom demanded. Even though I explained that I didn't do anything special, Tom wasn't satisfied. For a while, he even neglected his own duties to shadow me. After a stern warning from the department head, he became relatively quiet, but I still caught him staring at me from his desk occasionally. It was unnerving, and I wished he would stop. Tom's obsession with me affected his performance, leading to poor results for his team. They kept making significant mistakes, and their performance plummeted. His aggressive sales tactics likely contributed to the decline. With Tom's team faltering, my team finally achieved the top spot. Regardless of the reasons, it was gratifying to see my hard-working subordinates get the recognition they deserved. In my personal life, I continued to date Nancy, and a year later, we got married. Since I had already met her parents early in our relationship, everything went smoothly. Though I was concerned about our age difference, Nancy's parents surprisingly had no objections. I later heard that Nancy had told Mr. Wilson, "If you say anything bad about Richard, I won't speak to you, Dad." I had suspected it when he arranged our matchmaking, but it seems Mr. Wilson is quite lenient with his daughter. My mother also took a liking to Nancy. Although their sense of money is quite different, my mother and Nancy get along well because of Nancy's cheerful personality. In fact, things my mother ignores when I say, she often listens to when Nancy says. Thanks to this, my mother, who used to live a frugal life, now goes out to eat and shop with Nancy. While she still firmly refuses expensive gifts from Nancy, it's heartwarming to see her gradually get used to a more comfortable lifestyle. Having endured hardships for so long, I hope she now uses her time and money for herself. Watching the two of them happily choose clothes together, I couldn't be more pleased.